What's up, guys? My name is Laura. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about solo photography. It can be awkward and it is infinitely more difficult than shooting with someone else because you have to both be the mastermind behind the photography side of things as well as the model. But with the two different techniques I'm going to teach you guys, it is totally doable. So if you're in a situation, whether it's in your hometown or maybe you're traveling somewhere and you don't have someone to shoot with, these are both great methods. One of them relies more on equipment and the other one relies on a specialized Photoshop technique. Okay, so for the first method where you're only using equipment, obviously you're going to need a camera with a self-timer and a tripod, right? But I have the handiest trick that's going to make things so much easier, because if you're trying to set your camera up on a self-timer to take one shot and then running into the frame every time, it's literally going to be so difficult and take all of your energy. So I'm going to show you guys on my SLR camera exactly where to go to in the settings so that you guys can use this very, very helpful technique. Okay, so once you get into the menu options on your camera, you're gonna wanna look for something that says timers or self-timer. And if you go in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and click into self-timer as well, you can see that there's a couple custom settings within the self-timer menu. So what the self-timer delay means is this is the time from when I hit the button on the top of my camera to when the first frame is actually gonna get taken. And the reason I have this on 20 seconds is because I was taking some pictures when I was on a hike, and it was gonna take me a number of seconds to get as far into the frame as I wanted to go. Next, the number of shots. I recommend doing the highest amount that you can for your camera. Mine, the max is 9. And the more shots you take, the better chances you have of getting a good one. And obviously you're going to change the pose and the way you're standing between each one. So choose the max on that. And then the interval between shots, again, for me, the max was 3 seconds. I wanted the full 3 seconds just so that I could move around a lot within the frame and try some different poses and some different spots to see what would look good. Definitely remember that tip the next time you guys are shooting solo, because it's an absolute lifesaver. The other thing that I wanted to quickly touch on when we talk about equipment is the use of a remote or a camera that has some kind of a remote trigger on it. So this is an example of what a little remote looks like, and you can buy these for your SLR camera for very, very inexpensive. A lot of people use remote triggers when they're doing long exposures because it prevents the camera from shaking when you touch the shutter button. One thing that I did also want to mention is this Olympus Tough camera. Okay, this is a camera I travel with a lot and use a lot because it is basically break proof, and it is also an underwater camera. So it works really well for someone like me who does a lot of outdoor adventure. But I'm gonna actually bring you guys into a screen record and show you guys how this works. This actually has a remote trigger that you can fire off of your phone. But the cool thing about it is you can actually see the shot as you're framing it on your phone, which is super, super helpful. So let me take you guys into my phone so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is a screen record of exactly what it looks like on my phone. I'm gonna go ahead and hit remote control. Now you're looking at a live view of exactly what my Olympus Tough camera is seeing, and I'm looking at this on my phone. So I'm actually able to just look down at my phone and see exactly what I look like and position myself nicely for a shot. It helps you frame yourself in the shot, and it's also helpful just to get feedback on, exactly what you look like. Does your hair look messed up? Do you need to sit up a little bit straighter? And then you actually fire the shutter remotely by hitting the little camera icon on your phone. Okay, now that we covered the method that you guys can use with equipment only, let's talk about the other method that you guys can use. Basically, you're just gonna want to ask a bunch of different strangers to take shots of you. Now, as a photographer, this gives me anxiety because I definitely can be a control freak about my photos, just the way that they're framed, the way they're lined up. I mean, horizon lines being straight. Sometimes the sun, even if you set the settings a certain way, the sun might come in and out and change a little bit by the time you hand over the camera. So I use this with a specialized Photoshop method, and it literally works wonders. This is actually the main method that I use. So I'm going to take you guys now into my computer and show you guys an example of exactly what I do to basically add myself into all my favorite photos that I take on a trip. Okay, so take a look at these photos, and you'll notice that I actually was not in any of the original shots. Okay, so every single one of these images were photoshopped to add me in later. And you might be wondering why I did that. I mean, the images are beautiful on their own, but sometimes I just want to add a little bit of a human element into them. So how exactly did I do this? So these are some of the shots that I pulled myself out of. So basically I took some original shots that I was in. okay, in similar lighting, obviously in similar backgrounds, since these were all taken in the same place in White Sands National Monument. And I found some silhouettes that I liked, okay? And basically what I did was copy and paste myself out of all of these shots and then selected a couple different landscapes that I really not only liked, but also just wanted to add a human element to, because I thought that it would really just show the magnitude of the dunes, right? Because that's what I really, really wanted to show off, because sometimes in photos you can't really tell, you know, how big something is. So this is the example that I'm going to use. I absolutely loved this image. I think that it's beautiful, but these dunes were so incredibly tall, and I think that it's very hard to tell from this original image exactly how big this dune is. Now, out of all of these images, we have to keep in mind that we do need the lighting to be similar in the shot that we're adding to, not only in color tone, but also in direction. Okay, so there is a way that you could flip yourself around. So let's say if the light was coming in from the left side, and you were, the shot that you're pasting yourself from, it was coming in the opposite side, you can reverse yourself. So keep that in mind, but you just want to make sure, like, if, it's sunset and the light is coming in directly from the side versus if it's high noon and the sun's coming in directly from the top, we do want to keep that consistent. Now, in this image in particular, the lighting isn't that obvious. It's a bit ambient, so it's not really fully clear which direction it's coming in from. You can see that there are some shadows on the dunes here, whereas this is relatively well illuminated, but this is actually kind of a good example because the lighting isn't super harsh. That said, a silhouette like probably this wouldn't be great for it, because you can see that the lighting is definitely a little bit harsher and has more contrast to it. This would be another example of lighting that would not be great for that image, because the light is really coming from the side and it's very, very warm. It's not what I would consider ambient light. So I'm going to go ahead and select this silhouette. I really like this shot. I think that it would look cool to have me standing on the top of the dune here. And the lighting is pretty subtle and pretty ambient. There's not a ton of really harsh light. I mean, a little bit on the hair and in the front, but pretty much I'm backlit, right? So the sun's coming from the front of me in this image. And so I think that it's going to work out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command J on my Mac, which is the shortcut for just duplicating your layer over on your layer bar here. And then I'm going to come up and grab my quick select tool. These are basically the marching ants, if you've ever heard that. And this does a great job of just making really quick selections. It uses changes in color as well as tone and contrast just to separate whatever object or person you're clicking on from your background. So as you can see, it missed in between my legs right here. So I'm going to hold down Option while dragging my mouse, and that's going to undo that selection. And don't worry about it being perfect. You can see that there are some areas that aren't great. The one thing that we don't want to do is have the marching ants come too far inside the body like this, because that will literally cut a chunk out. Because what we're going to basically do is copy the selection and paste it. So it's okay if there's a little bit outside the lines, but we don't want to be inside the lines like that. So go ahead and keep clicking and dragging. Like I said, we are going to be able to make edits to this selection after the fact. So again, don't worry too much about it being perfect. You can make your cursor bigger or smaller by holding the end parentheses or begin parentheses, which can be nice for like more rounded shapes like the head here. And that is looking pretty good. Let's see. Just don't want to cut any of my shirt out. Just want that line to be really clean and straight. Perfect. So from here, let's go ahead and click Command C. Really doesn't want to get that little part. Command C. And then I am going to toggle over to my other image and hit Command V. Okay, so we're just copying and pasting. Now that I have this against a white background, and if your image is darker, you could just put this, like just go to File, New, and put on a white background if that's easier. But I just want to look at the selection that I made by zooming in, which you can do by hitting Command plus on a Mac. And just take a look at the edges. Now, in this particular case, the edges are not going to be of much importance because I'm going to make myself pretty small. So if I'm zoomed all the way out, you know, and I might even end up being a little bit smaller than this, you're really not going to be able to see those edges. However, you may want to do this with a larger silhouette. So for the sake of those who are doing that, I will just show you how to clean up the edges of the person. So we're going to go ahead and grab our eraser tool, which is right here. And this is too small. So I am going to make it slightly larger by using my close parentheses on my keyboard. Just for the record, you can also adjust the size up here as well as the hardness of the eraser or your brush. It's always adjustable up here. I'm going to keep my flow and my opacity very high. When you turn down the flow or opacity, it just means that the effect isn't going to be as strong. And for something where you're edging out lines, you don't really want that to be too soft. I mean, you want it to look sharp and realistic. So from there, I'm just going to go in, and you can see I missed a little bit of my hand here. Again, it's really not a big deal. You can kind of just make it look realistic. Obviously, that's kind of a skinny hand, but again, I don't think anyone's going to be looking in too much detail on this. So just cleaning up these edges where a little bit of the background was selected accidentally. You can see that some of the sand behind my arm got caught. And as I mentioned, the way Photoshop does this is typically by differentiating color and also contrast. So you're going to have a lot harder time with this if you're like cutting something out that's black, that's on a black background, or that's dark and on a dark background. And the same thing goes if you're cutting something out that's white and it's on a white background, it's going to be more difficult to make a selection. Whereas if you're cutting out something that's black on a white background, that makes things a lot easier. You can see that my feet look a little weird here. Just going to straighten that out and get rid of this. Now, by the way, let's say you made a mistake on your selection and you had like a big chunk taken out of the leg, okay? You can actually fix that by just going here to your clone stamp. Make this much smaller. So you want to make this around the size of your the hole. And I'm going to hold down Option and select from right here. So what this is doing is taking a sample. It's basically copying this area right here. Then I'm going to move it down over the area that I want to brush over and let go of Option and then just click. Okay. Now my opacity is way down on this. So as you can see, it's taking me a couple clicks to get this filled in. But you could also just put your opacity up higher and then make one click. Now, again, this actually looks a little unnatural because I kind of went out too far. So then you can just go back to your eraser tool and straighten that out. I like to hold Shift while I click. Click one spot, hold Shift, and then click the next spot, and that will just make a straight line. You can also just drag as you go. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to zoom out, and the next thing we have to think about is how large the person should be. So in this situation, I mean, you really don't know how large the dunes are, or someone that wasn't there wouldn't really necessarily know how large the dunes are. But they were actually really, really big in person, and I kind of want to show that off. So I'm going to hit Command T, which is the shortcut for free transform. And I'm just going to drag myself and make myself a little bit smaller just to show how big this sand dune really was. It honestly was probably even bigger than that. Okay, so I'm going to make myself pretty small here. And then let's just zoom in by hitting Command plus and make sure everything is lined up. So as you can see, my feet aren't quite in line with the ground. So we do want that to look natural. And this is a little bit off the arc here. So I'm going to go ahead and select my eraser tool again and just kind of drag along the same line. Again, you're not able to see this from this far away in this picture. Oops. So that's looking pretty good. I think that I'm a little bit dark in here. So I would probably do some further adjustments just to make myself look a little bit brighter. let's go ahead and grab levels from our adjustment panel right here. And I'm gonna pull in from right to left just to brighten things up. Now, I don't want this to adjust the actual background of the landscape. I just want this to affect me. So I'm gonna go ahead and command click on this layer, which is just me, okay? And then this levels is also selected, and I'm gonna hit Command E, and that's gonna combine those two layers, okay? And that is looking pretty good. So that's pretty much how you do it. Now, obviously, if you just have one shot that you wanna add yourself into, you can just grab yourself from another image, and it could be from the same day or a completely different day and different location. But for these, for white sands, I had a lot of landscapes that I really liked that I wanted to add myself into a few of them. So just to give you guys an idea, I actually selected myself from a number of different images, pasted them on a transparent background, and this makes it really easy to grab different little mini me's, I guess you could say, and be able to put them in a lot of different images to try out what looks good and what doesn't. Because as I mentioned, it's important for the lighting to really match up. And sometimes you think a certain shot is going to look good a certain way, and it ends up not really looking that natural or great. So by doing this, you just do the work once, and then you can paste yourself into a couple different shots. Guys, I hope that this tutorial was helpful and helps you guys get amazing photos on your next trip or your next solo photo shoot. Definitely let me know how it goes in the comments below, or if you have any other questions, and I'll see you guys on the next one.